Hi, and welcome to the Bookkeepers Podcast. I'm Zoe Whitman. It's just me today. There's no Joe Wood, no guest. We've got a really busy week ahead. And in the interest of making sure that we have a podcast coming out, I thought I'd jump in and talk to you about some of the things that we've got going on this week and the lessons that we take from spending time with other entrepreneurs in terms of the future of building a virtual bookkeeping practice, because it's a question that we get a lot. Is it possible? Is it possible to build this business from home? And you might tune into the podcast because you are building your business from home, or you're thinking about building your business from home, and you like to hear from other people who've done that and hear the tips and advice from the amazing guests that we bring to you every week. And I suppose the reason that we're so busy, and by the way, if you're watching this on the video, it looks like I'm in a jail. Like I'm in this I've got this concrete wall, but I'm actually in a trendy hotel, not in jail. So, I've been in Manchester for the beginning of this week because I'm part of a community called Content to Clients. It's a marketing community, and there was a meetup this week. So I came along to spend time with my community, learn from other business owners and amazing experts that were in the room as well. And it got me thinking, all of these things, always when you spend time with different entrepreneurs, you get different angles and different takes on your business. Joe and I have been very fortunate earlier this year. It's only March, but already this year, we've had some amazing opportunities to network and spend time with people who just give us different viewpoints on our business. And I really can't stress enough how valuable it is to have that network, because of the way it lifts you and shows you what's actually possible. I want to talk about building a practice and what we've learned, particularly a couple of things that came up yesterday when we were talking about marketing, and how that ties to your business. But also I just want to talk a little bit about the real power of having those other viewpoints on your business. If you're new to business, or you haven't been doing this for very long, or you're thinking about starting a business, and your community around you are employed, and you're running this idea I want to build this business, I'm thinking of doing this thing, and you run it past your family or your mum or your close friends, and they are not business owners, inevitably you come up against people wanting to tell you that it isn't possible, or even talk you out of it. I've definitely felt like that. I come from a background where everyone was employed. In fact, employment was the brilliant opportunity for me. I felt like getting a great career was a really good move. It gave me a lot of social mobility becoming an accountant. But it obviously didn't tick those boxes that I didn't even realize. I'll be honest with you, I didn't even realize that I would be better suited to entrepreneurship, because that wasn't what people around me were doing, and it wasn't even an option. And I think I'd look at people who I sort of classed as freelancers and thought, oh my gosh, it's so risky. So, when you start talking to people around you about, this idea you've got for business, or, the direction you want to take your business in, or the fact that you want to grow or scale or hire somebody or invest in some software, and inevitably people come up with that angle of coming from employment and seeing that as a less risky option. that's a whole conversation for another day. And they come at it with fear because they want to protect you. And I think that, it's different with Joe's family, because Joe is one of 5 entrepreneurs. So I think she's grown up in this kind of entrepreneurial family where people have been very supportive of entrepreneurship, and they realize all the things we say about, once you learn something in business, you can't unlearn it. And they know that because they've gone through that cycle many times, and they know that if that doesn't work, you go and do something else. And I've definitely experienced that, but I only allowed myself to experience it when I allowed myself to be entrepreneurial and call myself a freelancer, and then sort of take that business direction. So I think there's real power in surrounding yourself with people who get business and can have conversations with you, understanding why you're making the decisions you're making. I also think it's very valuable to have people in your community, some of those business owners that you're getting that sort of advice and using as a sounding board, being people who've done it. So learn from the things Jo shares about how she built a multi-six-figure practice, because she's actually done it. She's actually proven it. And I suppose the answer to the question that's the title for this podcast, can you actually run a virtual bookkeeping practice? Yep, because Jo did it. And she had a team and she scaled it to multi-six figures, and then it had value to somebody else and she was able to sell it. So the answer to that question is yes. So I think having people around you who can validate or give you their fast track to the thing you want to do is very helpful, because they're in the same industry and they get it. And I also think it's very helpful to surround yourself with people who are in completely different industries, because they are going to view your challenge from a completely different angle that you've never even thought about. We were on a trip earlier this year with a lot of entrepreneurs who have much bigger businesses than us. And I would say, roll back a few years, I would have been very intimidated to be in the room with many of them. And but actually, I suppose just taking the time to realize it's okay to be at the table with those people and talk to them about their business, and what have you learned that I could learn from, or what can I share, what's my perspective that I can bring to your business, and seeing yourself as sort of an equal player in that conversation is a massive game changer. Going for dinner this evening with a chap called Stefan, who we're going to invite onto the podcast really soon, and he makes these amazing desks which are like wall art. So, you know, when we're working from home, right, we need to have this, we need to have an office, and we might not have space for an office. So isn't it nice to have something that you can sort of fold away and tidy away? And he's made these amazing desks which fold away. They start as like a piece of wall art, and then you fold them down, and they've got the monitors and the whole setup for your computer, which I think is amazing. Like, what would someone like Stefan, you know, in, I suppose, a few years ago, when I thought, why would someone like Stefan have any views on my business, or like be a useful person to have in my network, apart from just being a very like friendly guy, but actually someone who sees your business from a completely different angle is very helpful to have in your world, because they will be using software and tools, and they'll have relationships with people that are outside of your network. And it's really powerful to be able to see your business through a different lens, I suppose. But the thing that I think, to be able to do that, to be able to build this network and know it's okay to ask for help and get support and take different viewpoints, I think we really have to like disconnect ourselves from the business, which is the hardest thing to do. Because if you're running your business and you're so heavily involved in it and all of the things that you do in your business, because I get it, it's completely vital to your income. Like, this is the reason that you're here. It can be really difficult to not make it emotional and to make decisions without that emotion attached to them. So having somebody else and almost putting yourself in a position where you're saying, hey, criticize me, that doesn't feel very comfortable, because you don't really want to have criticism. You want to be told you're doing it right, and yeah, keep going, and those decisions you made are the right ones. So someone coming in and saying, oh, have you thought about it from this point of view, doesn't always feel very good. So that's why being disconnected from the outcome, I suppose, or disconnected from the business, can be a really helpful thing to do. Prepared to do that, welcoming other views into your business can be a massive game changer. It definitely has been for us. I feel like over the, you know, if you've been part of this community or you've watched the journey of the coaching and support Jo and I have had to be able to support this community more, we've definitely evolved. You know, we've had different people in our world for different sort of seasons of business, and then you sort of move on and you move on to the next thing, or you grow in a certain way, and sometimes those relationships don't serve you anymore, and sometimes it will be the right time to welcome some other viewpoint into business. So build your network. That's the thing I'd really like to leave you with. If you are thinking about building this business or taking it to the next step, welcome in other people's viewpoints, because it's really powerful. So virtual practice, yes, I'm going to answer my own question. Can you actually run a virtual practice? Yeah, you can. Jo's done it. She's got the t-shirt. And for many of the bookkeepers in our community, their practices also started from home. That's how I started bookkeeping too, from home. It was only when I got a team, I thought, oh, we need to be in an office. Jo managed to build her team remotely, and one of her team worked abroad at one point. So, this is very doable, and we've got the technology now to do it. But there have been so many things that have come up in terms of not necessarily the virtual part of it, because I feel like the technology is there so that the virtual element of running a practice is so possible. Everything's cloud-based. We all are attached to our laptops all the time. We can do pretty much everything on our phones right now. The reality is you could have a completely digital nomad business if you wanted to. And there are people in our community like Bobby who are really working towards that and making sure that they are putting it's about the systems, right? You put the systems in place that mean you don't have to sit at a specific desk, and then your business is virtual. And I'm seeing this more and more. It's like a real trend to be able to have that sort of nomadic lifestyle, if you want to think of it like that. And I think it's really exciting. Like, this is a really exciting time to be starting a business. Everything's kind of there for you. It's just that bit about the mindset, about deciding I'm allowed to do this and I'm allowed to run my own business, and be prepared for the people who are really close to me to maybe criticize me because they're scared for me or want to protect me. But I'm ready to learn from people who've been there, or take those viewpoints from people who can give me just a different perspective on it. In the at the event that I was at yesterday, which was very much marketing focused, we had this conversation about pricing. And I think that pricing is, I think we have a lot of conversations about pricing in this industry, but I think it's really overlooked as the real sort of linchpin to everything that your business can do. Because the conversations Jo and I have with bookkeepers every day about, I want to scale, I want to get more clients, or I can't afford to do this or that, it usually comes back to the pricing not being right. And I want to just talk to you about the evolution of pricing. Like, in my mind, this is how I think this is the kind of journey I think we've gone on recently. So you might have, and I certainly did, see bookkeeping as an exchange. It's like a service delivered for time. You spend some time doing some work, and then you get paid for that time. And even just from very foundational level, the first change you can make if you're charging by the hour and then sending an invoice, the first thing you can do is make sure that people are paying you upfront. That's going to change your cash flow. Often the hourly rate isn't right, which is a massive problem, because it doesn't price in profit. It doesn't price in scaling a team or systems. And the reason that it doesn't price that in is because many of us have left employment to become self-employed, and the way that we've been trained to be paid is for an hour, an exchange of an hour for a rate. So we naturally choose an hourly rate. We say, oh, maybe I'm worth, let's say, £25 an hour, £30 an hour, but then we maybe haven't factored in that we're going to need to pay tax on that, there are going to be some overheads, and then we take a much smaller amount of that money away. Or, we speak to bookkeepers sometimes who aren't taking any money out of their business. They want to leave it there to reinvest, but there isn't as much there to reinvest as they would have hoped, because of all of those other costs that, have to be paid for. So I think sometimes just even the starting point of the hourly rate isn't right. We then see, we've certainly seen over the last few years, tools come in that can systemize transaction pricing. And I feel like transaction pricing is an evolution from hourly rate pricing, because what we're doing with transaction pricing is we're saying, I have the freedom to deliver the work the way that I see fit to get this outcome. I know how many transactions you've got, and there is a value tied, an investment by the business owner tied to every transaction that they're going to pay, regardless of how I execute that work. And that gets away the time, that removes the sort of time for money exchange, because we are saying, if your business is this complicated, it costs this much money, and I'm going to go away and put the systems in place. And if I can do that work in no time, then I still get paid the same. And that means that a bookkeeper can scale or have more clients. It also opens conversations about offering additional services in terms of advisory and things like that as well, which is brilliant because it means you can be offering more value, which you can charge more for, which is like such a hypothetical thing, right? Isn't it? You can charge more. And this is another question, like, how do we even price advisory? But then the next and the next challenge with transaction pricing is that we are going to be removed because of technology, because of software and bots and AI. And this is advancing, like literally every day someone's messaging me saying, hey, have you tried this new AI thing that can do this new thing? The process that is involved in executing those transactions is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And I think that bookkeepers are going to start to think, well, I don't think I can justify charging that for the transaction because there's another bookkeeper who can do it faster with their special tech that they've got. So I think we're going to get to this point with transaction pricing where we've been with hourly rate pricing, where we're like, I don't know that I can justify that anymore. I don't think we're there at the moment, but I think this is going to be a conversation soon. And I do think that transaction pricing is a really helpful evolution from hourly rate pricing when you're thinking about how do I price for value. But I also think that value is a very different area to be pricing in than transaction pricing. I think it means something else, right? So value pricing is then about how do we express to the client the outcomes that we're creating for them, so the client pays us for the outcomes. And that's about you using your expertise and your emotional intelligence and your analytical thinking skills and your communication skills to be able to speak to the client about what they need and be almost like an interpreter. Like, how many clients have you met who can't speak finance? They can't speak profit and loss account. And like, that's, AI can produce the thing that looks nice. I think over time AI is going to be able to even speak in a more emotional way, but it still will be technology. But you're the that person who kind of fills the gap. You're the person they're going to phone. They're not going to ask ChatGPT to have a nice, reassuring chat with them. They're going to ask you. So we've got to work out how we're going to fit that gap. And one of the things that came up yesterday when we were talking about marketing and pricing, and I'm very much part of a community here where people talk about, and they're not all, they're not in this industry. Lots of the people I'm with are coaches or selling some other service that has an outcome. And people talk about having a high value offer. In the bookkeeping world, Joe and I talk about having a gold standard service, the best of what you can sell, and going out and selling that to your client. That's like your one offer, the best of what you do. And that's something we teach when we're working through the Bookkeepers Collective with our community. So in the room, the conversation was kind of similar. We're talking about like what's the big offer, the big thing, the high ticket thing that you're going to be selling. And there was this great conversation about how do you price it, and sort of marketing tactics. And somebody was saying, everyone is tuned into the pricing tactics, the hacks, she described them as. Everyone's tuned into these hacks that everyone's been using for a long time. Like, for example, if you end the price with a 7, people are more likely to buy. I don't know. Do you buy things that are £17? I feel like it makes more sense to me that it's £19. But there is this thing about like buying something online that's £7 instead of £9, or 17 or £27 instead of £29, and like how that influences your behavior for some reason. So they were saying like everyone's tuned into this. So these sort of pricing techniques aren't going to work in the future. Let's call them that, pricing techniques. And they were talking about like putting a value on a high ticket offer. And you know what coaches are like I'm in this world. And people are like, oh, I sold this thing and it was like £10,000. And I said to the person, oh, but for you, if you buy it today, it will just be £8,000. Now, this is not how we talk in the bookkeeping world. But I can imagine this conversation playing out in real life. They were like, yeah, I wanted someone to pay me. I told the client it's 10 grand, but if they work with me today, it's only 8 grand, but they have to sign up today. It's like false scarcity, isn't it? Or sort of time limited deals. And then the person said, oh yeah, that's fine, and signed on the line. Like, oh no, I should have said, oh, it's 15 grand, but today it's 14 grand, And so they were talking about this. And then somebody said about how because of that kind of conversation and that background, you've just got to charge more. You've just got to charge more, which we all know, because I would love to say to you, just charge more. Next client, just charge more for it. In fact, I've had this conversation on lots of sales calls where people are massively, massively undercharging. And I've said, next time you speak to somebody, your minimum fee is this. And that, I hope, if you're one of those people, I'd love to know, like, was that helpful? How did that work out for you? But I don't think it's as simple as just saying, oh, my price is 10 grand or my price is 15 grand. And so I challenged it, because I said, like, it's nice to say the price is whatever I feel like it is today, however I'm feeling. But there is a point in economics where you have a demand curve and you have a supply curve, and if you're supplying at a certain price, your customer is only going to be prepared to pay up to a certain point. There's only going to be one place where that, like, demand curve is going to cross over, and then it's going to cut off and people won't see the value anymore. It's a bit like if you went to if you remember, like, the fuel strikes. I remember when I was taking my driving test and, like, there wasn't any fuel. And there is a point at which, like, maybe fuel becomes available, but it's so expensive that you would just go, oh, do you know what? I'll just walk, or I just won't make that journey, or I'll ride my bike, or, and it's the same with a service. You're going to get to a point where you think, well, actually, I'm not prepared to pay that, so I'm going to go and look elsewhere. Now, the work Joe and I do in the Bookkeepers Collective very much is about making sure you differentiate yourself, because I think the biggest challenge with an hourly rate is that if you've got a big list of names of bookkeepers, you've got Anne and Betty and Claire and Danielle, and then they've all got their hourly rates next to them, and you don't know anything else about any of those people. You are just going to choose the person who's the cheapest hourly rate. And we don't want that to be the situation. So the reason that you have a gold standard service and you sell the best of what you can do and all of those great things is that you are able to charge more, because people see the value of everything that you're including in that package. They're not just saying, oh, I need X hours of bookkeeping and I'm going to choose the cheapest rate person to do it. So we're trying definitely to move you to that point. But I also do think there's a point at which you say this is the price and people say, well, no, I'm going to go and find somebody else to do it. And so we were talking in this conversation about how do you actually shift the price? And I can't help myself, because I love to think in terms of graphs. I was like, right, what does that, if you're watching the video, I've got this, like, demand curve, and then I'm, like, shifting it. How do we make that shift so that people are prepared to pay more for that service from the same person, which potentially is exactly the same service? And the key is, and I think this is the big thing I'd really like you to take away from this. The key to getting that price higher is your personal brand, because the client is going to pay more when they trust you, know that you can communicate on their level, they relate to you, and they trust and believe in the outcomes that you're going to deliver. And the only way you're going to build that is by showing your credibility. Obviously you're an expert. Like, you're listening to a podcast for bookkeepers. I would say you're in this expert space of being a bookkeeper. You need to make sure people understand that you're qualified, but most clients don't know the difference between the different professional bodies. So, if you've got a certificate, they're going to take it that you're a professional. Your job really is to show them that you are credible, trustworthy, good at doing your work, have the same values as them, can have a great conversation, are a good communicator. And this is all the stuff that you can't get AI to do. So what's really brilliant about automating everything that you can, and then freeing yourself up to be this great communicator, is you can spend time building this personal brand, and this actually is the thing that's going to elevate you. And I think this was obviously a conversation in a room of different types of business owners, lots of service providers, lots of coaches, lots of people selling a high ticket offer, which is similar to our sort of gold standard service. Again, the best offer you can give, a high ticket offer, if you like. But whatever industry you're in, the way to make it more valuable is to build in your personal brand and expertise, and make sure that your clients and your prospects trust you, know that you are the person they want to work with. Because when you're the person they want to work with, your service is aspirational if it's not in reach, and when it's in reach, it's the service that they want to go to, because they're not looking for you versus some other bookkeepers on a list to choose which one they're going to go for. They're going for the one that they know is the person they need in their business. So I'm sure there'll be loads of lessons from all of the various other things we've got going on this week. We're actually heading to see Xero this afternoon, our amazing sponsor of the Bookkeepers Podcast. Xero are hosting a small business event at the House of Commons, so we're heading down there, and I'm going to meet up with Joe later. So I'm sure we'll report back and tell you about that in another episode. But I hope it's been interesting to hear my general thoughts about like pricing, building a virtual practice. Ultimately, I want you to make this profitable. And I know that the way for you to build a practice, it isn't just about building a virtual practice or a practice, is it? It's about building a business that works. And for it to work, it needs to be profitable, and you need to be paid, and you need to be paid well for the expertise that you bring. The way you're going to get paid well is to be prepared to separate yourself from the business emotionally, so you can make the right decisions for your business. Welcome challenge and critique from people in your industry and people outside of your industry as well, because they're going to bring a different viewpoint. And build your personal brand, show your credibility, show your trustworthiness, demonstrate how great you are at communication, because this is the thing that's going to make you different as a bookkeeper, and that is going to impact the way that you can price. And that's what's going to give you this profitable business. And then you'll know you can build this virtual practice, and it's going to work for you. If you would like to have a chat about any of the things that we've spoken about today, Joe and I are offering for a limited time some strategy calls. We can talk to you about your pricing, or we can talk to you about your next step with finding clients. It's no obligation. It's half an hour of our time in your business. So I'm going to put the link in the show notes underneath this video. Please book in. Our diaries are super busy, but there are slots there. So yeah, get booked in. I'd love to chat to you about the next step. I want you to know what to do next. And yeah, look forward to speaking to you. Thanks, everyone. We'll be back next week for another regular version of the Bookkeepers Podcast, and we'll see you there. Take care. Bye.